Okay, so let's talk about how to read more. This is not going to be a video about how to read faster. I have a video like that, link it up there down in the description. This is going to be about making more time for reading. This is probably one of my most highly requested videos. I get comments constantly, people asking, how do I read so much? How can you read more? And specifically, a lot of questions about how do I read so much as a mom. I haven't wanted to make this video because I feel like there are so many videos out there on how to read more, and they pretty much all say the same thing, so I just didn't think I needed to say it too. But it's so highly requested, we're gonna do it. I thought through this, and probably quite a few of these you've heard before, you've thought about before, and hopefully I have a couple of unique suggestions for you as well. But these are the things that work for me to make sure that I'm reading the amount that I want to read. Obviously, you can read as much as you want. You don't have to read as much as me, but if you want to be reading more, here's how I made time for it in my life. So I guess the first thing I'm going to address, I'm going to start with reading as a parent. Don't worry if you're not a parent, these tips will work for you too, but this is one that I get so often. And when I first had Dren and he was a newborn and I was up all night long feeding him and rocking him and trying to convince him to sleep, that's when I got most of my reading done. Drennan was such a bad sleeper as a newborn, and it was rough. And the way that I made it through was by reading. For me, reading is the most relaxing thing in the world, and so it's really important for me to make time for it because I feel like I get more rest and I feel like I reset better from reading than I do pretty much anything else. And so when I was really struggling as a new mom and not getting any sleep, the way I needed to cope, the way I needed to not get a terrible attitude and not completely lose it, was by making time for something that I loved, and what I loved was reading. So I started reading ebooks a lot. There's this amazing app called Libby, or I think Overdrive is the same thing, just less well formatted. I was able to connect my library card to the Libby app, and then I could just scroll all of my library's ebooks that they have in their system, and I could borrow them and read them on my book. Most of my reading came through that. My sister-in-law also has a hard time making time for reading. She has 2 young kids, and she doesn't sleep super well. When one of her kids wakes her up in the middle of the night, she can get them back to sleep, and then she is up for hours, and she usually just scrolls her phone. So I reminded her that you can get the Kindle app on your phone or the Libby app on your phone, and instead of scrolling for hours, you could be reading. And some people, reading wakes you up more, some people, reading makes you tired. If you're one of those people that reading makes you tired, go for the ebook. Or if you don't want an ebook, pop in your audiobook if you like audiobooks and set the sleep timer so that maybe in 30 minutes the audiobook will turn itself off so it doesn't run all night, but you still fell asleep to a soothing story. This also works for if you're waiting in line at the grocery store, or you're at the DMV and you're going to be there for an hour, or the doctor and you're going to be there in the waiting room for an hour. Pull out your ebook. You don't have to carry a book on you, but you always have your phone. Going along with talking about phones, there are apps where you can lock your phone for a certain period of time. There are apps that actually track how much time you spend scrolling, and I think a lot of us don't realize how much time is dedicated to scrolling. When we have a few minutes, for whatever reason, our natural instinct is to grab the phone, pull up Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you use, and just scroll for a really long time. It is relaxing, but it's also not necessary to do as much as most of us do. So there are apps that actually track how much time you're spending on the phone and what apps you're spending the most time on. And a lot of times just seeing your stats can kind of shock you into not wanting to grab your phone as often. But there's also apps that you can use that will lock your phone for a period of time unless like a phone call comes through or some sort of emergency. So if you're one of those people that tends to read a chapter or read a page or something and then without thinking about it, just grab your phone and start scrolling again, and then you realize, wait, I was supposed to be reading and I've been on Twitter for 30 minutes. If you're one of those people, lock your phone. Use one of those apps. There's actually a really cool one that I used to use where you can grow a forest, and for every 30 minutes that you're not using your phone, that you have this app on and you're focused doing something else, you grow a tree. And you want to maintain your tree, because if you break your 30-minute span, then you kill that tree and then you just have a dead tree in your forest. Use technology to your advantage. If you're addicted to your phone, use the apps that help you break that addiction, or at least have focused periods of time where your phone can't be used or else you'll kill your forest off. Okay, now let's move on to not phone related things. Let's talk about buddy reads. So I've always been an active reader, but never have I ever been an active reader like I am now. That didn't make sense. I'm the most active of a reader that I've ever been. After joining BookTube, I started reading way more than I ever had before. And it's not because of some weird pressure that I put on myself about like I have to read so many books so that I can talk about them on my channel. I read for the love of it. But the thing is that being able to talk to people about what I'm reading has made me love reading so much more. I created this channel because I wanted to talk to people about books, and talking to people about books then made me so much more passionate about books and made me want to do it that much more. Reading tends to be a pretty solitary activity, but in my opinion, when you make reading a group activity, it becomes so much more fun. So I recommend trying out buddy reading if you haven't yet. There are websites and apps that you can go to join buddy reading. I know that there's tons of outlets for buddy reading on Goodreads, but I also have a buddy reading group. I actually have a couple. I have my Patreon where we buddy read 2 books a month over on Discord, and all the funds that come through Patreon go towards helping us with our adoption fund. And then I also have a second buddy read group that is on Discord for anybody that can't or just doesn't want to use Patreon and just wants to hang out and buddy read. We've got that too, and we buddy read 1 book a month. And it's a big group of us that's reading a book at the same time and just chatting about what we're reading. I recommend trying it out. Even if you don't know a lot about buddy reading, just join the Discord or join a group on Goodreads and ask people, hey, how's this work? People are super helpful. They'll explain it to you, and just give it a go. Because for me, being able to discuss what I'm reading makes me more excited about what I'm reading. Even if I'm hating what I'm reading, being able to rant about it makes it so much more fun, and then makes me so excited to start the next book. Another really important thing, for me at least, is being comfortable with quitting a book. For me, being comfortable with giving up on a book has been amazing. Sure, maybe I miss out on a great ending, but what I don't miss out on is the next book that I may pick up that I may love so much more. Forcing myself to finish a book that I'm not enjoying makes me not want to pick the book up again, makes me not want to read. And so if I'm not enjoying a book and I just give up on it, that makes it so much more fun to read. It makes me read so much more because I don't have pressure to force myself to do something I'm not enjoying. I get to just pick the books that I'm loving. I have a whole video about DNFing. It's up there. Go check it out. Actually, it's old. Probably isn't very good. Next, let's talk about following authors. If you loved an author's book, pick up more books by that author. I've found some of my favorite books by picking up some of an author's lesser known novels after I picked up one of their great ones. And a lot of times I like those lesser known ones even more. If you want to make sure you love what you're reading, try following authors that you know aren't going to let you down, or at least are a lot less likely to. For me, the more amazing books I read, the more excited I am to read more. And when I read several duds in a row, it makes me not as excited to pick up the next book. So making sure that you're following authors that tend to not let you down, for me, makes me way more excited to pick up the next one. Next, do your best to avoid slumps. A reading slump is when you just don't feel like reading at the moment or at all, ever. I have a whole video about this as well. Again, it's kind of old, may not be great, but I'll link it anyway. Tips that help me avoid reading slumps and help me to continue to want to pick up books constantly. Being strategic about what I read next and being able to tell if a slump is coming on and how to shift so that I can avoid that slump is a big part of why I read so much and why I enjoy reading so much, because I just don't really fall out of love with it. But a big part of me avoiding slumps is having such a variety of the genres that I read. If I start to get tired of fantasy, instead of just stopping reading for a while, I'll switch to another genre. If that other genre isn't doing it for me, I'll switch to rereading an old favorite. There are lots of things that we can do to kind of make us not feel like we're in a rut and instead just love what we're reading. Last thing I'm going to mention is going to sound the most obvious, but I actually have reasonable tips for it, and that's to make time for reading. So I'm a really scheduled, planned person, and I have a time of day that I spend every single day that is devoted to reading, and that's my kids' nap time. I have an hour to an hour and a half every single day that I dedicate to physically reading a book, because physical reading is my favorite kind of reading, and it's what I enjoy the most, and so I make sure that I have time every single day when I do it. You can do it before bed, you can do it as soon as you can wake up, you can do it on your lunch break at work, whatever. The point is, make sure that there's a consistent time every day or most days where you are in the habit of picking up a book. Obviously, it'll be difficult at first to create a habit, but once that habit is made, it'll be a comfort to just, this is my time to read each night or each day. A way to make that really realistic is to having multiple editions of the book if that's possible for you. So my favorite way to read is to have one book 3 editions. And I'm blessed that I live in an area where I have a great library. So a lot of times I can get the physical book, the audiobook, and the ebook all through my library and just be completely consumed by one story. So when I lay down with my kid, when he goes and has a nap, I always lay down with him until he falls asleep and then leave. And while I'm waiting for him to fall asleep, I have my ebook. And then whenever he's asleep, I can switch to the physical book. And then when I'm doing the dishes while he's eating or something, I can plug in the audiobook and I can just have this story going on anytime I have a moment to enjoy it throughout the day. A lot of times that's not realistic and I have to have a separate physical book and audiobook because I can't get a hold of both of them in a not money-sucking way. But if it's possible to read like that, it's my favorite way to read. And making sure that you set aside time every single day for reading, or making sure that you have multiple editions of the same book so that you can always be focused on one story, helps you to get through that story a little bit faster. I'm not talking about speed reading, I'm not talking about skimming, I'm not talking about blowing through a book for the sake of speed. I'm just talking about focused time. Reading helps you to be able to not stretch that book over half of a year or however long. And for me, being able to get through a book in a more condensed period of time helps me to actually love that book more because the story has consumed me instead of just having a couple of sentences here and there throughout a long period of time. And again, being able to love a story helps me excited to jump into the next one. So there you go. Those are my tips on how to read more. There are lots of videos out there like this, so I feel kind of weird making one too, but hopefully one or two of these tips were a little bit unique and you're excited to try them. Hopefully it'll help you to be able to focus more time on reading if that's what you want to do. If you have any tips or if you're going to try any of these out, I'd love to chat with you more about them in the comments. I post videos every Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. See you guys again soon. Bye.